Enough of that. What triggered Trump this time was Powell's comments last week on inflation in relation to Trump's on-again, off-again tariffs. On Wednesday, Powell said, quote, unemployment is likely to go up as the economy slows. In all likelihood, and inflation is likely to go up as tariffs find their way and some part of those tariffs come to be paid by the public, end quote. This is not a controversial view. Jerome Powell's a smart guy, and I'm about to talk to a really smart economist, but you don't really need to be that smart to understand that those things are likely to happen. But Trump didn't like it.
A few moments later.
U.S. inflation slowing, I should say, to its lowest rate in more than 4 years. That, according to April's Consumer Price Index report. It's an unexpected and very welcome development that's defying economists' expectations amid President Trump's ongoing trade war. Let's go live right now to CNN business and politics correspondent Vanessa Yurkevich, who's watching all of this in New York. Vanessa, walk us through this morning's report. Where do things stand?
Encouraging signs, Wolf. Inflation continuing to move in the right direction, cooling on an annual basis to 2.3%. Prices, which we've been watching closely, down 12.7% in the month of April alone. Also worth watching, airline fares down 2.8%. Airlines have been warning people that
the smoke was much worse than the fire. I think we were all expecting a jump in inflation. A big part of that was the dropping gasoline prices. This is very significant for households. That's one of the biggest expenses we have on a week-to-week basis. That drop in gasoline and energy prices, a big deal in keeping inflation in check. And it is in the sweet spot right now, between 2 and 2.5%. This is just where the Federal Reserve likes it. This economy right now seems like it's going to be all right when we have that tariff pause right now.
Rising market will do. Oh, it's going to get a lot higher. In fact, I told people 5 weeks ago, this is a great time to buy. I got criticized for that. Now they don't criticize me anymore. People should have listened. But it's going to go a lot higher. You're going to see, we've never had anything like this happen. It's an explosion of investment and jobs, and great companies are coming in. Never seen anything like it.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. I got to tell you guys, some of these liberal media propagandists are going to have to check themselves into a medical facility from the copium overdose that a lot of them are about to have over the fact that, once again, they were wrong about President Trump's trade war and his tariff policies. Because like I told you guys from the beginning of all of this, that I was very skeptical about the narrative coming from the mainstream liberal media that Trump's tariffs are going to crash the economy. The stock market is going to collapse. The dollar is going to collapse. We're going to have hyperinflation. Empty store shelves. China is not talking to Trump, right? This is what they said. This is what they said. Now, lo and behold, we had a whole month of President Trump's tariffs at the Liberation Day, a whole month, okay? No excuses anymore. No excuses. The latest CPI report, a bombshell report, comes out showing that inflation dropped, right? Inflation fell again, like it's been falling throughout all of Trump's presidency.
Rick Santelli is ready with the CPI number at the CME. Rick, what's going on?
Yes, here we go. These are April read on the Consumer Price Index, arguably one of the most important metrics at this point in time. Up 0.2 on headline, and that is a tenth lighter than expected. And do remember, in the rearview mirror, at least up to now unrevised, that minus 0.1 was a 5-year low. Let's strip out food and energy. Up 0.2, also 1/10 light to expectations, and it follows up 1/10, which was a 4-year low. Let's take a broader view. Move year over year on headline. 2.3. Yes, you guessed it. 1/10 lighter than expectations. 1/10 lighter in the rearview mirror. And it also now represents a fresh 4-year low because it's lower than our last look, sequentially lower. And finally, year over year, X food and energy, known as core, comes in at 2.8. That equals expectations, equals our last look, and equals the fact that it's a 4-year low. Now, I like doing the indices. This is a CPI index. It goes all the way back to 1913. Comes in at 320.795, a new all-time high. Pretty much happens every month. The index itself makes new highs. And if we look at core, which started in 1957, it comes in at 326.43, and you guessed it, another all-time forever high. We see that yields are moving down a bit because we have made progress. What the irony here is the rearview mirror, those rates were so much smaller 4 to 5 years in those interim periods at a time where the renewed Fed look on inflation due to potentially tariffs. We went a year and a half, Joe, where we really made no progress, but yet the Fed seemed to pretend we did. Now we're making real progress, and all anyone could talk about is inflation, inflation, inflation.
April CPI came in at 2.3%, down 2.4% from March, as I predicted, okay, that this right here, right, the narrative around President Trump's tariff policy is nothing but the mainstream liberal media trying to create a reality that they want to exist, not the real reality. Now, again, it's just fascinating to me because I'm some random dude on the internet, right? I'm not a genius, right? I'm from a one-stop light town in country, northeastern North Carolina, right? I come from a family of bricklayers, not economists, not academics, right? But for some reason, I feel like at this point, I have more credibility than all of the so-called economists who told us that President Trump's tariffs were going to cause this massive inflation that we have not seen, okay? Why is it that the CPI continues to show inflation declining? On April 30th, I said that the normies are going to be shocked by next month's CPI, right? The reason why I said that is because I knew that the inflation report was going to come in saying that inflation has continued to decline. Now, people are asking, well, how did you know that, right? Are you a genius? No, I'm not a genius. I'm just a guy that's not Trump deranged, okay? And I have common sense, and I've watched these people tell lie after lie after lie after lie for the past 4 years on the economy, right? Like when they told us that inflation is transitory, right? Don't worry about it. Okay, don't worry about the trillions of dollars that Joe Biden and Democrats put into the economy, along with the Feds having interest rates at basically a historic low. Oh, that's not going to cause massive inflation. Okay, this is what they said. Okay, so I've gotten to the point now where I'm like, the most likely truth is whatever the opposite of the mainstream media says, right? These are the same people that told us that President Trump would cause mass food shortages with the mass deportations, right? Because they told us that we need the illegals to pick our cotton and that food prices would skyrocket as a result of illegals not picking our cotton anymore, right? This is what they said. And they were wrong, right? They were wrong again, okay? So again, the cope is going to be hilarious. And some people are asking, well, how did you know this? How do you know? Well, again, I have common sense. Also, on top of that, I look at other data points, right? I just look at the data. I don't let my political ideology drive me when it comes to talking about the economy, right? Because, you know, when it comes to talking about the economy, you know, you want to have some credibility, okay? And the best way to have credibility is to be right. And I've been right so many times where I'm starting to get bored, right? But anyways, you don't have to believe the government's numbers, right? Truflation has the U.S. inflation index at 1.68%. Now, the reason why I knew that this CPI report would come in lower is because CPI usually trails Truflation. Truflation, I believe, is like real time, okay? And in March of this year, Truflation had our inflation at 2.29%. Now, it just so happens that inflation fell, according to Truflation, for the month of April, all the way down to 1.68%, right? So for the month of April, according to Truflation, inflation fell, right, after Liberation Day. And I keep trying to tell you guys over and over and over again that tariffs and inflation are not the same thing. Most people don't understand inflation, right? They don't understand it. They don't know it. And I picked up on this just watching the financial media. I was like, these people don't know what they're talking about, right? They're either lying, purposely lying, or they just don't know what they're talking about, because tariffs and inflation are not the same thing, okay? Inflation is primarily a monetary phenomenon, and we're not printing more money or we're not spending more money than we already were spending under Joe Biden, right? So I didn't expect inflation to really tick up like that, especially considering the fact that during the Great Depression, as I mentioned to you guys multiple times, that the Smoot-Hawley tariffs did not cause inflation. They actually caused deflation, right? So again, this narrative that tariffs automatically lead to massive inflation was just a very silly thing to me. It was so silly. But who knows? The mainstream liberal media, the new cope is going to be, well, you just haven't seen it yet, right? You just haven't seen it. They've been telling us for 3 months straight that we're going to see it. But, you know, hey, we haven't seen it yet. So that's going to be the new cope. There just hasn't been enough time yet. Okay, we'll see.
The April Consumer Price Index, a measure of inflation at the retail level, was released moments ago and showed that inflation essentially held steady. Let's start right there. What do these numbers tell us about inflation and where the economy is right now?
You know, the good news is the economy, I think, is in a lot better of a place, honestly, than a lot of economists had expected at this point, especially given all of the conversations we've been having over the last several months about the impacts and almost psychological impacts that tariffs can create around buying things, people pulling things forward, spending more money to do certain things. That has not happened at the levels that I think had been anticipated. It could still happen, meaning some of that could filter out into maybe some data that comes next month or the month after. But this economy has been remarkably resilient and is really a demonstration of just how flexible the economy can be, and maybe even more flexible than some economists had been anticipating.
Number, are you happy?
I think, look, this number, you're going to hate this. This number doesn't matter because the tariff effects are going to really start to show up in next month's number.
Next month? Oh, okay.
The Fed probably is going to cut this year. And I understand the wait and see, but you've got 3% growth last year. We're probably slowing to around 1% growth this year. And so inflation, they're going to have an easier time saying this is a one-off level shift in prices. And they're going to be able to look beyond that. And that's what they really want to do.
Is that because you think the jobs market is going to decline as a result, or you think just the GDP?
I think there's going to be some more slack, and there should be more slack in the labor market if we're slowing to 1% growth this year.
Why are we slowing? Uncertainty, all the things the tariffs did?
All
is it self-inflicted?
Of the things.
Yeah.
But the whole first half of the year is so volatile because you've got incredible pull forward of demand. So you have this explosive private demand, final domestic demand in the first quarter. You're probably going to have flat to negative demand in the second quarter only because you pulled so much demand forward. So
right, we'll see. Anyways, the market, the S&P 500, up 0.92 percentage points today, so almost up a percentage point today, continuing to surge. Year to date, the S&P 500 is in the green, okay? And you have the NASDAQ, which is still slightly down for the year, 1.33%, but for today is up 1.69%. Now, why is the market rallying on this news? Well, because with inflation continuing to tick down, that means that it is more likely that the Feds will be more comfortable lowering interest rates, in which Jerome Powell is also wrong as well, too, claiming that the tariffs are going to cause massive inflation. This is why we can't lower interest rates. Jerome Powell is always late to the party, right? He should be fired, to be honest with you. It's a damn shame that the president can't fire the Federal Reserve chair for being bad at his job, because he is bad, okay? Because as I predicted, right before the election, this dude decided to lower interest rates, even though the economic numbers did not warrant that, right? But he did it anyways to try to rig the election in favor of Kamala Harris and the Democrats. And I told you guys at the time, I was like, yeah, inflation's going to tick up because of that. And guess what happened? Inflation ticked up. Again, this is not hard stuff. Now, the economic conditions are different, and the economic conditions suggest that, yeah, we probably should start cutting rates. Not fast, not big 50 basis point drops, which is what the Federal Reserve did under the Biden administration, right before the election. No, not that, but very, very, very slight decreases over time is probably appropriate, considering the fact that inflation is damn near almost under 2% again, okay? So now you have the big banks like JP Morgan, they're now walking back all of their recession predictions, right? All these people get, we're going to go into a recession, right? They're walking it back, okay? All of these big banks are saying, nah, we take that back, right? Also, what I was right about, I told you guys that President Trump, the administration, right, they were already talking to China behind closed doors. The reason why I knew this is because both sides were essentially rolling back some of the tariffs. So I already knew that they were going to come to a deal. I already knew that China was going to fold, okay? But the mainstream liberal media believed everything that China said, hook, line, and sinker, right? Didn't critically think or didn't challenge any of the narratives coming out of Beijing, right? But they essentially lied about everything that was happening here in the United States of America, okay? But behind closed doors, they were talking. They had secret meetings 3 weeks ago. As I told you guys, they already were talking behind closed doors. This is just common sense. It's not hard if you pay attention. But again, the media, they just refuse to give President Trump credit when it comes to his work on the trade negotiations with China.
Donald Trump over the last few days has touted win after win. He's been doing so many things, and it appears that Congress is sitting at the sideline saying, okay, I guess there's nothing we can do. And that's how the public views Congress right now. What is your response to that, the way that the public is seeing all of this?
That's accurate. That is what the Republican-led Congress is doing, is absolutely nothing. We're legislating on reducing regulations for walk-in refrigerators. That's the kind of stuff that we vote on right now. And actually, I think the public would like us to have a say in tariff policy. I mean, I don't think that Trump gets a lot of credit for cleaning up his own mess. You know, my 4-year-old gets credit if she cleans up her own mess, but the president, not so much. What are we actually getting here? Donald Trump is weak on China, is the bottom line. He's weak on China. He's been weak on China for a long time. And look, I've got no quibble with the Chinese people, but the Chinese Communist Party, yeah, like I don't like it when they're stealing our ideas and our businesses. I don't like it when they're trying to start a war over Taiwan. I don't like it when they disappear people who disagree with the regime, although maybe that's where Trump find some companionship with Xi Jinping the same way he has a bromance with Vladimir Putin.
Scott, you want to jump in? I see you.
This whole idea that he's weak on China. Did you not read the news about what Secretary Bessent found out in these meetings, that during the Biden administration, the Chinese officials said, yeah, we knew we could ignore Biden. We could ignore whatever agreements we had because he was too weak and would never, ever stand up to us or stop us. Now they've been drugged to the table by a strong American president. And for all the talk from China, from Beijing, oh, we're going to outlast the Americans. We're fortified to outlast the Americans. A few days into this, they're in Switzerland, cutting the beginnings of a deal that's going to be good for the United States, admitting some of the things that they have to admit in order to get a more balanced situation with us. This is a total win for the president, and it's a total win for the rock star Scott Bessent, who goes overseas and pulls an amazing rabbit out of a hat. But do not forget, they told him we ignored Biden because he was so weak and we could afford to do it.
You know you're losing when you have to bring Joe Biden into the narrative.
I didn't say it. The Chinese did.
No,
they are losing. I agree with you. The Chinese are losing.
The reality
they brought it up.
No, the reality is when you have to make your point,
they brought it up.
Refer it back to Joe Biden.
It's not me. It's
what
them.
is happening is not working in your favor.
Is you don't like watching sausage being made because this administration does something that none other has. Make it all open. Make it all transparent. There's going to be volatility, which, by the way, has ended up being an incredible buying opportunity. Just when you're in the guts and concerned about how bad it's going to get, had you bought the market at the dip, you've had a phenomenal year. The point is, you can't just look at it by the hour. You got to wait for the outcome. Now, Trump is unusual. And look, what I've learned is don't look at the noise. My goodness, you can't deal with Trump's noise. Look at the signal. What's he trying to do? Reset world order on trade.
Yeah, so I want you guys to understand just how bad these people are wrong, right? Even CNN, they're putting out articles saying that Trump's egg price friction has suddenly become reality. So basically what they're admitting, right, is that President Trump was right. That prices are falling. They don't really want to admit it. They're reluctant to admit it. They're still putting their spin on it, but they can't deny the data, right? You can't deny the hard data, right? For months, President Donald Trump has falsely claimed that egg prices are tumbling. It wasn't true then, but it's true now. Oh man, this Coke is delicious. It's absolutely delicious. I can taste it. The liberal tears. Egg prices fell 12.7% last month, the biggest monthly decline since 1984. The Bureau of Labor Statistics reported Tuesday, and they could continue to fall this month too. The USDA reported last week that a dozen large white shell eggs now cost $3.30 on average, down a whopping 69 cents from a week before. It's a remarkable reversal after egg prices surged in each of the past 5 months and 17 of the past 19 months because of a deadly avian flu epidemic that necessitated the mass culling of egg-laying hens, aka Joe Biden decided to kill all the chickens, right? And that's why egg prices skyrocketed, right? It had nothing to do with the president, right? But, here we are. So with that being said, guys, I just want to say this. When it comes to the analysis that I give you guys, especially on the economy, okay, I just try to call it like I see it. If I feel like the president is doing something bad, or if I disagree with a policy, I'll tell you I disagree with it. Like, for example, when they came out and they talked about giving $5,000 to women to have babies, I was like, nah, I don't like that policy, right? It's not a good policy. That's not something I would do. Actually, in the new tax bill, they proposed doing what I said would be a better idea, which is to have essentially baby bonds. We may talk about that more in the future when the topic comes up, when I, talk about what's in this tax bill at the appropriate time. But regardless, I'm just saying that when I tell you guys this stuff, I'm telling you based off how I see it, right? And I'm not afraid to call balls and strikes, right? I'm not afraid to tell you guys, and I feel like President Trump's economic policy is bad, or that we might see some inflation. I'll tell you, if inflation, if I believe it's going to tick up, I'll tell you it's going to tick up, right? But if I don't believe it's going to tick up, if I believe that it's going to continue to go down, I'm going to tell you I believe it continues to go down. My opinion really is not connected to my political preferences, right? Unlike the mainstream liberal media, the so-called news, everything they report is about, well, what makes Trump look bad, rather than what's actually happening, rather than the reality, because these people literally lied about everything. They admitted that, yes, we lied about Joe Biden's mental decline to help Democrats. So you don't think they lie about the economy? You don't think they lie about the tariffs? You don't think they lie about inflation? Of course they lie about it. Of course they lie. Because ultimately for them, they don't care about their credibility. They just want to put out the narrative, right? And unfortunately for the media, this narrative around how there's going to be massive inflation didn't lead to inflation. It turns out that telling everybody that there's going to be inflation, that even consumer expectations of inflation don't necessarily lead to inflation. I told you guys from the beginning, the most inflationary part about the tariffs is the rhetoric. Right? Not the tariffs themselves, but the rhetoric, because what the media wanted is that they wanted people panic buying, right? They wanted people to go out and start panic buying a bunch of stuff, which would drive up prices, and then they could turn around and say, see, the tariffs are causing inflation. But that didn't happen. That didn't happen, right? Consumers didn't panic, okay? And you didn't see the price increases. And now these people have to cope, right? They got to cope because once again, they were wrong. They're shocked. They're stunned. Why is it that the economists are wrong? Why haven't we seen the inflation yet, right? Well, you wouldn't be surprised if you actually were doing real analysis. If you weren't just repeating what some liberal economist, what some Democrat told you to say, and then try to present that as news, if you actually knew what you were talking about, then you wouldn't be surprised. I'm not surprised. And I kept telling you guys this for months. So moving forward into the future, we will see what happens, okay? We'll look at next month's CPI report, and like I told you guys, if I feel like things are changing, if I feel like things are getting bad, or that you need to worry, or that President Trump's policies are something that we need to be concerned about, I'll tell you that straight up, right? I'm not going to lie to you. I'll tell you exactly what I think. I'll call it exactly how it is. And, ultimately at the end of the day, things are getting better, right? President Trump's policies are working. He's getting win after win after win, and these people just hate to admit it. They hate to admit that President Trump was right. These people spent the last 4 years lying about everything, okay, on behalf of Democrats. And for whatever reason, you have people, even conservatives who are fully aware of the lies of the media. All of a sudden, they start believing the media when it comes to these tariffs. Fascinating, absolutely fascinating stuff. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.